born to be elite pod. I'm Shawn Michael.
And I'm Party Johnnetty. And together, we are the PodRockers.
The PodRockers are recording BEP live from our home elite studios to bring you, the PodRocker Nation, the very best in AEW wrestling commentary. And this week, we are bringing you a BEP house show wrestler spotlight. And this house show, we are featuring the American Nightmare Cody.
Nice, nice. Have you ever thought about auditioning to be like the second ring announcer for them?
I've tried, you know. I need to get my YouTubes up and get a little bit going. I always thought that'd be fun. Like, it's fun to do those voices, but I tried to do a Randy Savage for a while, and it like tears your voice.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know what those guys would have to do. Like, it's like no soda because the acid will mess up your throat. It's like all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah, right. Tea with honey and lemon and ginseng or whatever. You can't have any coffee, any water. I've learned that the hard way, you know, like it's basically tea and water and that's it. And just making sure, you don't screw up anything. And announcing is fun and also one of the scariest things ever. Because you basically have to know everything. And sometimes you just look like a fool.
Yeah, if your voice breaks when you're doing that, like you can't get away with it. You can't be like, and there he is on the turnbuckle. Oh man, just sorry guys, hit puberty there.
Yeah, they will. The fans will let you know too. You will get it, and it's hilarious. If you can laugh at yourself, it's no problem. If you can't laugh at yourself, find something else to do.
But the American Nightmare, Party Johnnetty, is a guy. He broke into. I watched a few of his matches in WWE when he first came in. Because there's a nice run of these, second, third generation guys. So I'm really excited to talk about this to kind of see some of the stuff that I didn't really notice back in the day that you've probably been aware of for a long time. So as we do with these segments, let's jump into a little bit of the pre-wrestling bio for the American Nightmare Cody. So what did he do before he broke into the wrestling scene?
All right, get this. I know you will be surprised. Cody was into amateur wrestling.
No way.
Yeah, right.
So how common is that for guys that break into the professional wrestling to kind of do amateur wrestling when they're younger? I
think it's actually a good mix. There's not so many guys nowadays probably, but still there's in both worlds you hear kind of the jokes. I know with freestyle and whatnot, you'd always hear the joke of the kid coming in the first day of practice going, all right, where's the ring? And not realizing that it's a totally different sort of wrestling. Some guys felt, even though, as when they were younger, that there was no way that you could train. And so amateur ground style, freestyle, Greco-Roman, whatever is kind of the steps and the roots. It gives you sort of this history already. You get kind of the precursor to professional wrestling. So a lot of guys would use that. I mean, myself included, I, wrestled back in the day as well. So for me, that's kind of how it was too. I always wanted to do it. It was also another form of martial art. And, there's a lot going on when you can easily take someone down and make them feel, like less of a man, even though they're, twice your size or whatnot. It's kind of a good feeling. But
oh yeah, it's kind of like the jiu-jitsu thing. It's like size doesn't matter. It's all about positioning and what you can do with the leverage and whatnot.
Oh yeah, yeah. So you do get a lot of guys that have had some sort of amateur wrestling background. If you ask some of the guys on the independents and whatnot, I would probably say at least half of them are going to say, yeah, I wrestled either in middle school as a kid or in high school. So yeah, there's definitely that. Cody's no different here. He was actually really good. That's the thing too. He doesn't get enough credit for it. He actually won states twice in Georgia in the 189 pound class division, the weight class division. And to win states, it's no easy feat. I mean, there's certain situations where you might be able to win states where it was just luck of the draw, but that doesn't really happen. And for him to be able to do that, it means he was pretty talented. And I'm sure that he actually probably got scholarship opportunities and whatnot with college, but I don't believe that's the route he took. I don't even know if Cody has any college to his name. Maybe he does. Maybe I'm incorrect there. But before,
I've seen him in some of his his workout videos. He wears like a Penn Station wrestling shirt.
Oh yeah, his Penn
So I don't know
State.
if maybe he had an he had an offer there maybe and decided against it.
Yeah, I don't know. He might even wrestled for Penn State, since I have no clue. Maybe that was just something that I didn't catch, because I noticed that too. Yeah, he was wearing that Penn State shirt, so he must or he wrestled at a camp there or something. I don't know. But in high school, to be able to make states, that's really good. And then you get to the college level, and then that's where it gets even crazier, and no surprise there. But actually, Xavier Woods, I believe on Jericho's podcast or something, talked about back in the Georgia days, actually he and Cody had a rivalry.
Nice.
And wrestling. So it's kind of funny that goes, it gets to that point. And I actually believe Cody beat him, but I'm not too positive. I think Cody came out on top on that one. So interesting that happened. I do know the reason why I'm unsure if Cody went to college, if he had some college or whatnot, is because I know he also attended acting school. And I believe he actually flew out to California to do that. I know it was like by the age of 21, things really weren't going his way. And he tells it in some sort of podcast or a video, a vidcast or something. And I can't remember where it was at, but he says basically like one day he called his dad back up and was just like, yeah, things aren't really working out. Do you care if I come back? And then next thing we know, he's in OVW. And that's where he ends up getting into professional wrestling. Now, before that, he had actually been a referee in his dad's wrestling promotion, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. He had learned kind of the basics of wrestling at a young age, I think 12 or 13, but he didn't really fully train until kind of the OVW days. And so that's where we started to see him take off in wrestling.
Do you know, did his dad kind of push him away from it at all, or want him to kind of venture out first, or was that just more of his decision?
More than likely. I think it's kind of a probably both. Usually you always hear the stories of wrestlers telling their kids that please don't go into this. I know there's some other professions that it's kind of like that as well. You hear that like, oh, please don't. Anything that's hard on your body or, something of that nature. I know, like, coming from a blue collar background, always being pressed to go to school so that my body isn't torn down by the age of 50. That's it's not uncommon to hear that from an older wrestler telling their kid, whether it be, female or male, do something else. Don't do this, be smart. And yet still it has to happen. It's your own journey. You're the one that has to take it. So it might have been Cody, dare I say, he could have possibly said, you know what? I liked the wrestling thing. I don't like it that much. I want to try the Hollywood thing first. And if that doesn't work out, I can always go back to it. Or it could have been he was always just, that was his fate, and he was trying to run from his fate, and yet here it is now.
Yeah, I know you hear that a lot with like NFL football players. I've heard a number of them be like, yeah, I'm never letting my kid play football.
Yeah, right.
It's like I'm going through this so my kid doesn't have to. But yeah, I mean, when your dad is one of the greatest of all time, it's got to be, one, that's a huge like challenge to break into something like that, because you're always going to be, Dusty Rhodes' kid.
Yeah.
And how do you live up to that height? We've seen a couple of these guys come in, in the last 10 years who have these famous dads who couldn't do it. Ric Flair's kid was one who kind of got a big start, and he kind of faded away after a few years. So I don't, it's always that question of, would you rather be coming in the first or be coming in behind somebody?
Yeah. Just to get back to his college thing, someone actually asked him on Twitter back in 2017, did you turn down a lot of scholarship offers to chase your dream? And they basically go on to, tell like he was a straight A student and, state champ. He said he got offered from Penn State, but he would have had a hard time competing there. My freestyle skills weren't there. Plus, I didn't want to go to college, saw zero value in it. But my wife has a master's, so she covers that part for the family.
Nice.
But yeah. So I guess that answers it. He didn't go to college, but he had the offer to go to Penn State. So who knows?
Interesting. Yeah. So we see him. So he gets up here, he gets to college, kind of tries some acting. So what's Cody breaking into the wrestling business? We see this a lot. Usually it's kind of more the indie route, but Cody's kind of a different specimen here. So what was Cody's, I guess, more of his pre-AEW days?
Yeah, right. So Cody, in the one sense, you get to see with the second generation wrestler, whereas, you know, I kind of talked about that last time with Brian Pillman Jr., Cody Hall, and a couple others where they're trying to do the indie scene. Cody didn't necessarily have that. He did have OVW, but I mean, even at that time, it was like a different camp. Like, I know people that went to OVW that aren't in the WWE, obviously, or Impact, TNA. But on the other hand, though, too, OVW is such a great school and a lot of great people came from it. So it's not surprising to hear that that's where Cody ends up at. And so he actually is not even there for a year, I believe. He starts in 2006 and then ends up going to the WWE, gets the call up in 2007. Like I mentioned previously, at the time, OVW was kind of this WWE camp. And so WWE would scout guys there, pick them up, bring them into WWE. That was kind of their area. And then, you know, things happened, things fell apart. And so WWE went to down south, you know, and went to eventually Florida Championship Wrestling, and which turns into NXT, and then OVW goes to TNA/Impact now. And at the time, though, he's in OVW. He teams up with Shawn Spears. They end up winning the tag belts and have this back and forth feud with the Untouchables, aka that's Deuce and Domino, that was in WWE. And he ends up actually becoming a Triple Crown winner at OVW. He wins the heavyweight championship, but he only wins it for a day. He beats Paul Burchill, and then he loses it back to him, who's also Paul Burchill. You might know him from WWE. He and Shawn Spears eventually end up breaking up. Cody wins the television title from Spears, but then loses it to him a week later. And then Cody joins WWE from 2007 to 2016, almost a full 10 years before he ends up eventually asking for his release. His beginnings with WWE is he basically has some feuds with Randy Orton, with Bob Holly. He ends up teaming with Bob Holly. Then the big first thing where Cody gets the push is he helps form Legacy, or The Legacy, with Randy Orton, Ted DiBiase Jr. Obviously, you hear those names, and if you're new to wrestling, maybe you don't know the name, but obviously you know Dusty Rhodes. And then we have Cowboy Bob Orton, and then his dad before him. So Randy has the lineage of wrestling. You have Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and Ted DiBiase Jr. And so they really kind of played up the legacy thing for a little bit there. And this was at the time that I stopped watching wrestling. And funny enough, for me, my own experience with this is it was around this time I turn on the USA Network and I see these three dudes come out and they look exactly the same to me. And I couldn't tell any of them apart, really. And I was like, okay, I'm turning this off. And it got to the point where I felt WWE really reached this. Everyone was back in trunks. Just, you know, you're in your Speedo, basically. Everyone's baby oil and everyone's ripped and they have the same haircuts and everyone's like the same height. It wasn't fun to me. I'm like, there's no characters anymore. What the heck is this? And so I jumped out of it. So I don't really have any sort of big knowledge with what was happening with Legacy and whatnot. I know around 2010, 2011, this is where I start getting back into it. We get dashing Cody Rhodes, and he's great with this. He's basically a narcissist. He's, doing the pretty boy gimmick, can't touch his face. And it's actually around this time that there was I don't know if it was WWE that did it, that they ran the poll, or some wrestling fan site or something ran the poll, but they did who's the best looking female wrestler, who's the best male looking wrestler. And like Cody Rhodes won it 2 or 3 years in a row. And so
Nice.
I don't know if this is a chicken or egg moment here, but I think the dashing Cody Rhodes character came from that, and he just ran with it, and it was awesome. And it ends up, this is the funny thing when, art imitates life and life imitates art, where what ends up happening is he has this feud with Rey Mysterio, and Rey busts his nose open, Cody's nose open, breaks it. And Cody ends up having to wear the what I deem, if you're from the Detroit area, the Detroit Pistons were a great team around 2003, 2004 with a dream team, Rip Hamilton. And we call it the Rip Hamilton mask. It's that clear mask that you put on your face to protect your nose. When you get
plastic looking thing.
Yeah. You get busted in the nose too much. It's to help prevent your nose from breaking. And so Cody's wearing that. He's talking about how he's not dashing anymore. But then he comes out with paper bags. He gives them to fans. He has people give them to fans. Tells them, put these paper bags on your face. And I don't want to see your ugliness. You guys are disgusting. Fun little gimmick. And all the meanwhile, he's cheating, using his mask as a weapon, headbutting people. He ends up beating Ezekiel Jackson for the IC belt, the Intercontinental Championship. And this is his first legitimate title with the WWE. And he actually gets it. And I don't know if this was his idea or if it was just coincidence or whatnot, but the IC belt gets a change in look, and it goes back to the old school looking IC belt, and everyone loves it. It's one that people kept asking to bring back, and they finally did it. And to me, Cody was a great IC champion. Nowadays, I think of him really kind of as a staple IC champion. I think of The Miz. That's another one that it's just those guys, I thought, did a great job with bringing up the IC belt for what it is and kind of how important it is again. Unfortunately for Cody, though, he never really got that chance. He ends up losing the IC belt to the Big Show. And then instead of when the IC champion used to really fight for the heavyweight belt after, a certain run, Cody doesn't really get that. He kind of gets the honky tonk man treatment. And Cody had it for about 8 months, loses it to Big Show. And next thing we see is he's teaming up with Damian Sandow to form the Team Rhodes Scholars. And this is where we get Mustache Cody Rhodes. And that's pretty funny. Kind of, they had a good chemistry with one another, good team, but there was really nothing ever really formed with it. They would lose matches. They never won the tag belts. I'm pretty sure. And what ends up happening eventually is they split up. Cody Rhodes is about to win the Money in the Bank briefcase, and Sandow turns on him and climbs and gets the briefcase. And then they have a little feud going back and forth with each other, and it just never really blossoms into anything. It was unfortunately kind of forgettable. But they had
at this point, was Cody getting kind of a lot of pop from the crowd and stuff? Was he, or is that kind of because 8 months with the IC belt seems like a long time, and you're going to have a handful of matches in there. Were those good matches and everything, was he kind of setting himself up to be that next guy, and it just they just didn't get that push from? Because I know the other thing I always feel like I've heard is there's a big Vince McMahon versus the Rhodes.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And did you get that feel from it, or do you feel like he really wasn't getting the pop from the crowd at that point?
I kind of always felt like that. Vince is just really weird. He has such a love-hate relationships with the Rhodes Reynolds family. And I don't know. I don't know what it is in this case. It was just very much you would hear Cody would bring up so many different ideas for creative, and they would all shoot his stuff down. And he was getting over with the crowd. I mean, the women loved him. The guys liked him. I know Cody always kind of got that nickname, the 3-star general, when it came to wrestling matches. It wasn't like Cody was, you were dying to see what he could do in the ring as a wrestler. You thought, yeah, he's a decent wrestler. He can wrestle, but you really kind of like some of his characters more than the wrestling aspect of it. And, I mean, I think that's a mix. I think that's partially on him, and I also think that's partially on the WWE. Cody has some great ideas. Obviously, we can see all that, and he ends up proving himself when he goes on the independent run after the WWE. But, like, yeah, it really, I don't know. I think Vince McMahon does have this weird thing for the Rhodes family. Like, he just does not like them. And, I mean, at a time, Goldust was so super hot that arguably he could have even had the championship belt, even if it was only for a month.
Yeah.
It could have been justified seeing him. I mean, Goldust, especially when he first came out, he was a character that people hated. Beautiful. His Goldust stuff with Razor is some great rivalry stuff. Talk about mind games. I mean, it's things you can't get away with nowadays, obviously, in 2019, especially with some of the language that was said. But at the time, it really explored and it pushed the boundaries, and it made you feel uncomfortable with what he was doing. And Cody, I don't know. It really was just kind of like, hey, he had these gimmicks and these ideas, and he was only able to give some of it, and it just never really happened. Like, they've always mistreated him. And I know, like, some of the wrestling critics have said this. I don't know, though. I don't know if they would have gave him the opportunity to run with it if he would have done anything. It kind of surprised me to look up how long it took him to actually win the IC title. He's been in WWE since 2007, and I believe it was 2010 that he finally wins the Intercontinental belt.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, to me, you would think that he would have got pushed big time, but that's not necessarily the case. And then he ends up, really falls into this rabbit hole where you kind of see this is kind of what happens to wrestlers. All right, well, we think you hit your glass ceiling here with the IC belt, and there's no going further, whether you think you will or not. And so he always had the crowd behind him. People loved him as Dashing Cody Rhodes. They really liked him in the Team Rhodes Scholar thing. He even got a mustache over, like, at a time where it wasn't really, like, it wasn't a hipster mustache or anything. It was just a regular mustache.
Yeah, isn't there only one guy who's rocked that mustache in the last 10 years? Joey Ryan. That's got it over his belt as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, honestly. And so, it's just crazy to me. So he and Damian Sandow end up breaking up, and they do this thing, and then this leads really into Cody and Goldust teaming up, and we see this creation of Stardust coming. Originally, it's Cody and Goldust. Cody ends up, getting fired, quotes, so he could take time off and go on his honeymoon, and he just got married. And so he comes back and he turns into this crazy Stardust character. Then they go on their run and people like it, and it's fun, it's weird, and they end up breaking up, and Cody does what he can with the character. He goes on a solo run. This eventually ends up leading into the Stephen Amell thing, where it was Amell and Neville versus him and Wade Barrett, and then he kind of goes off. They were doing these crazy, like, vignettes backstage where Cody's, going off talking about space and whatnot. And he joins up with the Ascension and they form the Cosmic Wasteland, but it goes absolutely nowhere. And then May 21st of 2016 happens. He asks for his release, and it gets granted the next day. He's very respectable about it. He's not talking trash. He doesn't say one bad word about WWE. He just, admits that creative had nothing for him, and his ideas that he brought, they shot down. I know there was one thing, I think he might have leaked it himself, But Cody and Brandy wanted to do something where, like, I don't know if they want to make him kind of like the Miz's character in a weird way, like a Hollywood type Cody, or you might be able to find it on YouTube. I'm kind of, it's kind of in the back of my mind. My memory's fading on it, but like he tried doing this almost DDP-esque, like motivational speaker type of character. And he actually took his own money and produced this segment that he tried pitching to WWE, and they just wouldn't hear it. But like, it wasn't really that unique or anything. And if I saw that too originally, I probably would have been like, yeah, we're passing on that. But the idea that he had for it, though, was a lot better than how it came off. So I know
this was all pre-Miz too.
I want to say, yeah. But maybe not. I know the Miz had been making like the Marine and stuff, and he was really pushing that. Like the motivational speaker Cody thing, it really reminded me of like, I forget what it was exactly, but I just remember that it reminded me of a bad version of when DDP was doing that kind of thing. And I think they were trying to do that with, not Shawn Stasiak, but another guy, who his name's escaping me at the moment, but they had these kind of like segments. He was like the devil's advocate type of person, and I don't know, but it reminded me of those. It wasn't really like anything that I was like, wow, that's really going to be what we need. You know, it was more on the lines of, yeah, that would have been fine, but it would have been forgettable.
So we back up to the Stardust. So I've poked in a bit, and I've seen some of the promos he's cut with Michael Cole and stuff like that, but what was the gist around the Stardust character? I know it was Stardust and Goldust were together. Goldust was definitely, the Shattered Dreams production movie star that fell apart, that had, issues with his dad kind of thing. What was Stardust kind of gimmick?
Oh, dude, it was crazy. It was out there. It was kind of fun and weird, and, it was very comic related. And I don't even know what happened, like if he got hit on the head, or I can't really recall how it formed. I feel like it just happened one day. And he really was talking about space and stuff. And the fun thing about it was, Goldust was always an out there character. And when Stardust formed, it really, really made Goldust weirded out by him. And it was kind of funny. It was one of those moments like, you weirded out the weirdo. And it really, I think that's what people really liked about it. And he just took it and he ran with it, and he had as much fun with it. And I know sometimes you hear that he hated it, and sometimes you hear that he loved it. And he basically did with it what he could. But the sad thing was, people knew that it wasn't going to go anywhere though either. So like it was a descent into madness with the character. And then it just really, like, you could tell when he joined up with the Ascension that tag team wasn't doing anything. They got buried the moment that they came up onto the main roster, and still haven't found a place yet. They're still, I believe, signed with the WWE. And it was not good. So, like, eventually the Stardust character just kind of falls flat.
All right, so he asked for his release May 21st. So what happens after that? So he gets granted, which I guess, how does that work? Does he have like just an indefinite contract, and he just says, hey, I just want to get out of it? Or is it just more kind of a continuous ongoing basis that he can kind of get out of it whenever? I hear them talk about that a lot when guys ask for the release. Do you know how that works on the background?
Yeah, really. It's one of those, it's a crappy answer to give, but it depends. Some guys, they'll just let go, and they'll say, you know what? Say his contract went up until the end of 2016, or maybe the end of 2017, and they don't really have anything for him. He's not really happy. He asks for his release. And in some cases they go, yeah, cool. No, totally. And it might be out of respect, knowing that, or it could be disrespect. You don't know. They go, well, he'll do something, we're not too worried about him. And, in some cases they'll grant it, and sometimes they'll grant it, but they'll be like, hey, we still want a 90-day waiting period, where we'll still pay you, but you can't wrestle anywhere right away. if you decide to wrestle right away, you're not going to get paid. And so it depends. A lot of guys will get into that situation. Sometimes they'll wait out their contract, and then they'll have that 90-day grace period too, like the no compete clause. Some guys will ask for the release and they won't get it. They like what happened with Luke Harper just not too long ago. I believe his contract runs up in now 2021. Some guys, when they get hurt, the WWE feels the need, even though they're in contract, say to 2020, and you got hurt and you were out for 6 months, they felt that your contract should be extended now into 2021 for 6 months because they couldn't use you for that 6 months. So it's really, I'm not here to get into, workman's rights or anything like that, but it's really shitty is what it is. And so, like Luke Harper, for instance, I think his contract was up at a certain time, and then they said, well, you were out for 6 months, so we weren't able to utilize you. So we're just going to keep you. We're not going to grant your release. We're going to keep you on until that time, and hopefully the fans are going to forget about you when we finally will release you. So that really is the big depends. And Cody did it at a time where it really kind of was like still WWE was the big dogs. They knew that some guys would make it on the indies, but they still weren't worried. Like I'm sure they knew Cody would go to New Japan. Cody would go to Ring of Honor. Cody would go to Impact, but they didn't care because they weren't competitive with them. It was the WWE and these were all lower tier. And they were like, well, he'll get some good money and that's it. But nowadays, you're going to see more and more guys who want to ask for the release and it's going to be denied, or their contracts are coming up and you're already hearing this. The WWE is just offering them a shit ton of money to throw at them just so that they won't try to sign with the AEW. And these guys basically will sign, and it depends on what kind of person you are. Either you sign, and you're making double your salary of what it was, but you're not wrestling at all and you're just sitting there. Or you're a guy that is like, I need to create, I need to go out, I need to do something. No, I'm sorry, I'm done. And so they write out their contracts and then move on and go somewhere else. And, Cody avoids all that, obviously, and then ends up, them being nice kind of ends up costing them, I guess, right? So from 2016 up until now, you're seeing Cody hit up all these different independent promotions. I mean, Cody on Twitter, I believe it was the next day or something after his release, he releases a list of guys that he wants to face, this like wrestling list of dream matches for him. And it's really cool what he did. And so he basically wrestled anywhere and everywhere. And like Cody was just a gracious guy. From what I've heard, he didn't charge too much for some places. Sometimes he would just show up and then he would take his money that he made and he would give it to a charity that night.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah. So you heard some really great stuff, or, like they would just do stuff, anything like the photo opportunity and stuff, he would take that money, and give it away. Just a ton of good stories. And, he ends up getting signed with Ring of Honor. He ends up getting signed with New Japan and Impact as well. And he does some stuff there. That's where we talked about that in previous episodes. He joins the Bullet Club. There's some fighting within Bullet Club. And then obviously next up, he does the All In stuff with the Bucks. And now things go super crazy. You can arguably say you took Cody's experience with the WWE and what he learned from there and probably from his dad and just watching and seeing. And he took that and he used it, he utilized it. And now it's more than likely that the brains behind a lot of this stuff, a lot of the deals and whatnot. And I'm not taking anything away from the Young Bucks here. I'm sure that they had a crucial part in this as well. But I also feel that Cody, with his personal connections and whatnot, he was able to kind of bring this into a more serious light. So, would the Bucks have gotten into Hot Topic without Cody? Yeah, probably. But, I'm sure a lot of the other stuff that they were able to do I think they've even said in previous interviews that Cody Rhodes taught him a lot. So,
oh, nice. I mean, can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a smart guy. You can't take anything away from him. I mean, it's kind of funny. I was just looking at his date of birth and I'm like, oh, okay, we're around the same age and, he's making a shit ton of money and, I'm on a bunch of podcasts. So.
Yeah, but I mean, you come up with your dad who's like his dad booked a bunch of the shows, right? If I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah. I mean, Dusty, you can spend pretty much a whole podcast series on Dusty alone. Just everything. Dusty, not only WCW, NWA, the territory days, Dusty with NXT. Triple H had such an admiration and a respect for Dusty Rhodes that really it can be argued that Triple H is the one that brought Dusty back into WWE and got him really focused. And a lot of the popular characters from NXT are kind of big now because of the help of Dusty. And I mean, take it for what you will, but that's Dusty's. It's not a bad thing to have Dusty Rhodes as your father. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, especially if you're attentive and you kind of listen to his stories of the past, you can kind of build and be like, you may not be like able to plug it in directly, but it's like, oh, I remember my dad telling me about this story about this specific thing that happened. We can kind of relate it to where we are now. And here's the lessons I learned from him. I was listening to a podcast that had Luchasaurus on it, and he talked about his NXT days and how Dusty didn't directly create the Luchasaurus character, but kind of indirectly did. Like they had discussions about like, we've got this idea. We're kind of like, we just can't quite put our finger on it. And then when the Luchasaurus, whenever he kind of got in I think it was AAA or wherever he went, like everything kind of fell apart. He's like, this is what Dusty and I were thinking. And he got that character going, that gimmick going.
Nice. Yeah. I'm not surprised. And I mean, Dusty's not every hit's a home run, but I mean, Dusty was a great wealth of knowledge and a great, just a great person. Like from what I'm told, you could basically learn so much from Dusty Rhodes, and that doesn't surprise me at all. There's a reason why he's been it's in the wrestling business, is in his blood.
Well, we get Cody all the way into AEW. So what other stuff I like to talk about is kind of like what their wrestling bio is in this. So the wrestling bio of the American Nightmare, like what's some of his signature moves, chants, things that he's known for?
Yeah, so, it's not like Cody has a terribly crazy move set. He's not really flippy shit. I quote that, the flippy shit, but I mean, he's kind of a mix of new style and old style. And to me, I think he's a well-rounded wrestler, and I can see why some people found that he's just kind of average, harken back to the name of the 3-star general. He has the Alabama Slam, which he adopted that from Hardcore Holly. That's those roots. And he does a running crossbody. He's got some drop kicks. He's pretty good with that. He's got a crazy moonsault. He would do some crazy stuff with his moonsault. And I'm talking top of the steel cage, moonsaulting off that. And I mean, that's scary being the dude that has to try to catch Cody, and fall. He's got a springboard kick he calls the Beautiful Disaster, a Russian leg sweep, and, muscle buster, inverted suplex slam. And I mean, he did some other stuff with the Stardust character. Like he had a inverted DDT. He had what he called the Falling Star, which was a springboard senton from that ring apron to the outside of the ring. He did the springboard bionic elbow and, the Beautiful disaster kick. That's the springboard kick to the head. So nothing too crazy there. As in regards to chants or catchphrases or anything like that. As a Stardust character, he would always hiss, and that was pretty hilarious and fun. He came up with a lot of fun, weird quotes and whatnot, but there was nothing besides the hiss. I don't know if there's really anything that signature-wise that I could really pinpoint to Cody. Like, what's his saying? I don't know. And maybe that's part of the reason why. Like, I mean, with the Bucks, you'd be like, yeah, super kick party. With Kenny Omega, good night, bang, or goodbye, bang, good night, whatever. And so some of the guys have that. I don't really recall anything besides, Dashing, Cody Rhodes, like his nicknames. The essence of mustachioed magnificence. That was awesome. The son of a plumber, and the Prince, the American Nightmare. That's his nicknames were a lot better than like catchphrases or anything like that.
Yeah, I know he's got the weight belt he's been wearing to the ring. It's like "Do the Work" was what I've seen on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess it's more of Goldust move, but the falling down uppercut punch.
Yes,
I've seen him do that. I don't know if he's always done that or he's just done it more recently, but I've always loved that move. Do you know, has he been wearing the weightlifting belt since he kind of left WWE?
Yeah. He kind of started that with the whole weird fallout of the Bullet Club and the Elites. Like, he was really starting to do that, and it was kind of a fun little gimmick on being the Elite that you'd see. I think he gave both the Nick and Matt Jackson like their own weight belts with their names on it, and yeah, it was a fun little thing. But yeah, he really has utilized the weight belt more recently.
Yeah, I always did. Cause he, whenever you hear that he's a 2-time state champion in amateur wrestling, you see that in his moves too. So it seems like he'd be a guy that wears a weight belt. And I kind of like that it's got its own thing. Like during Double or Nothing, it was Attitude Killer. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot of cool little things you could put in on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, there's one thing I can do, and that is read Wikipedia. So I want to read some of the accomplishments of the American Nightmare Cody. So in Alpha One Wrestling, he was an A1 Tag Team Champion. Bulletproof Wrestling, he was the BPW Champion. Global Wrestling, he was the Next Gen Champion. National Wrestling Alliance, he was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, which we saw at the All In pay-per-view. IWGP United States Champion, Ohio Valley. So he's like you said, he was a Triple Crown winner there. He was the Heavyweight Champion, the TV Champion, and the Southern Tag Team Champion. I kind of find it interesting, some of his pro wrestling stuff. So he was the most improved wrestler of 2008.
Yeah,
and
right.
He ranked number 8 in the top 500 in the PWI 500 in 2018. Ring of Honor, some cool stuff here. He was the Feud of the Year with Omega in 18. He had the World Championship once, the 6-time champion, or 6-man tag champion with the Young Bucks, Wrestler of the Year in 17. And then some of the stuff you mentioned where he was in the WWE, so he was the Tag Team Champion 3 times, Intercontinental Champion twice, WWE Tag Team Championship 3 times, WWE Tag Team Championships #1 Contenders Tournament he won with Damian Snando, you said. The Slammy Awards Outstanding Achievement of Baby Oil Application in 2010 and Tag Team of the Year with Goldust in 13. And I guess I think this is very fitting to end with him too on this, is he was the Wrestling Observer newsletter worst gimmick as Stardust in 2015, which I found interesting when I was looking at this. Goldust has won that 3 times.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
So when you think of the American Nightmare, what are some of, I know one of his 5-star matches I've seen with his brother, but what are some of is that the one you go to for your 5-star match for him, or is there some other ones that are good to check out for Cody?
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely that's his 5-star match. I think that's his only 5-star match, actually, like legitimate if you're going on the melt scale, 5 stars. Cody's had some great matches though as well. I know WWE, it's a little bit harder to see like or hear some of the stuff that he's been in that you'd be like, oh yeah, I want to try that. He was a part of a great WWE Intercontinental Championship match at WrestleMania 32. And that was between Stardust, Zack Ryder, Dolph Ziggler, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Sin Cara, and The Miz. And yeah, that's a lot of guys. That match is just a fun match. And I don't know if it really showcases Cody the best, but it was a great match nonetheless with a lot of good guys that were able to make what on paper looked like it was going to be a clusterfuck into a really decent match. There's also his match with Nick Aldis at All In that we talked about too. That was a nice match. And I think that's one to really showcase kind of like seeing the WWE style outside of it and what Cody Rhodes was able to do to adapt and yet still make it his own thing. I know at WWE Hell in a Cell it was Cody and Goldust versus Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and the Usos. That kind of gets mentioned as well. And really, though, like he has some great matches actually with Kota Ibushi, New Japan Wrestling Dantaku in 2018, and he has some good stuff with Kenny Omega as well that you can check out. The other Ibushi match is Wrestle Kingdom 12, 2018. There's one between Cody and Hangman Page versus Omega and Ibushi. This is towards the end of the New Japan. This is where the feud really boils over. Sakura Genesis. That's a good match. That's kind of fun. And I forgot too, like how Hangman and Cody are really becoming friends, and it's fun to watch that and being the elite. The Cody Rhodes Omega 2018 ROH Supercard of Honor 12. That's a great one. And then there's there's two more that I would say check out, which is Cody Rhodes versus Kenny Omega versus Kota Ibushi, New Japan King of Pro Wrestling. And lastly, Cody Rhodes versus Okada. And that was the G1 special in the US, which is really fun and weird that they're in the US for like the first time in a long time. New Japan is. I don't know if New Japan ever. I think they. Well, did they? I don't know. They might have come here in the US like and teamed up with like AAA and stuff like that. I don't recall if the New Japan G1 special in the USA was the first time New Japan came over by themselves without teaming up with anyone. But Okada is the face and Cody Rhodes is the heel, and he's in America. And you would think that people would be chanting for Cody, but they absolutely despise him, and it's amazing.
Awesome. That's kind of like the old days when it was DX versus the Hart Foundation in Canada. It was completely flipped, and in the States it was flipped. Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's so funny because, you expect Cody to get booed in Japan, but not in his own hometown, not his home country anyway. So, that was that's a good match too, Cody Rhodes and Okada. But yeah, I would say check those out. Really, it's sad to say that, like, check out his stuff in his independent run. He actually has a great match with Kurt Angle as well. And it's a good back and forth, and it's like an independent. You can find it on YouTube. I don't think Melt's ever rated that. I don't think Melt's really rates stuff like that at all. He rates mostly just, bigger promotions. But yeah, that was a fun match that you can find on YouTube. And his list, really, if you can track down Cody's list of people he's wanted to wrestle, he has a lot of good matches with those on his list too. So it's definitely between 2016 and now, I would say check out that stuff. And just kind of get a highlight filler of Cody in the WWE to try kind of get a understanding of him.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff there for Cody. I'm excited to see him in AEW. The thing I've noticed just in this little bit of watching him is when he's given the opportunity, he can tell a story.
Yeah, right.
That NWA title match was like that had a lot of emotions to it. The match with his brother had a lot of emotions to it, and the Shawn Spears one that's coming up soon is going to have a lot of emotion in it. So really excited to see kind of the things that come from him.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I have to say, even the match with his brother might be one of my favorite matches of most recent wrestling. Not just with him, but just in general. The overall story, I just absolutely loved it. On one hand, it's no Omega Okada series of matches, but on the other hand, to me, it was just as important as some of those. The way that you can tell a great story that never really got to happen in the WWE.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They tried to push it in the WWE, but the Vince and them just did not think it was going to work. They had a one-off match with Goldust and Cody trying to face each other, and the ending was botched. It was really weird, and they cut it off before it even could grow. So like they had this one situation, I think they called it an audible in the ring, like Vince got in the ref's ear and ended the match early and said the fans weren't into it and blah, blah, blah. And
really?
Yeah, it was really weird. So I was happy to see that they actually got to tell the story that they originally wanted to tell with the WWE.
Well, so as we're kind of tied into this episode, I've got some great news coming out. So we got the Under the Ring news. So let's jump in the ring. So AEW finally announced when they're going to debut their AEW on TNT show, which will be October 2nd, 2019. It'll be a Wednesday. It'll be 8 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a 2-hour show, and this is going to take place from Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Really cool.
I've kind of been confused. So they didn't announce a name. Like, a lot of people were saying it was going to be Wednesday Night Dynamite. It just said AEW on TNT. Is that the title they're going with? Is that the gist you're getting, or do you think that there's more to come?
Who knows, man? I mean, they kind of got a lot of flack for that name, so maybe they're like, you know what? We're going to try to call it something else. Maybe they might just stick with it. Maybe they might realize that's the way to go. Don't give it a name. You don't have to be like Monday Night Raw. I mean, look at NXT. Besides the NXT live events for their quarterly pay-per-views, just calling it AEW on TNT is cool with me. Like,
it's just like NBA on TNT or whatever.
Yeah, right. I was just about to say that. Like, sure, yeah, you have Monday Night Football, but you really, I don't know. You still just calls it's an NFL football match or whatnot, or NCAA football. Game day or whatever. Don't we dare say the big S word for NFL?
Yeah, no joke, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with AEW on TNT if that's the route they end up ultimately taking.
And what's cool about this, so a lot of people, Capital One Arena is a pretty big arena. I think it's 10 or 15,000 people. I know a lot of questions about, okay, how are they going to sell out these weekly shows and how are they going to keep this up? So tickets went on sale and they sold out in 4 hours.
Yeah.
I know whenever I was kind of flipping through and saw it happen, I know a lot of people were like, oh my God, it's already sold out, but there's still like some tickets being able to trickle in. And I think you just told me before we kicked off the show that they're saving 1,000 tickets that are going to be sold closer to the event. But to me, their first show, big arena, they're selling it out in 4 hours. And I saw a Twitter message from somebody that said that he knew somebody. Of course, this is, the whole, like, I know somebody that knows somebody, but they're talking like Ticketmaster has never seen this kind of demand for a weekly wrestling event.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy. And on top of that, to be Washington D.C., like as a wrestling fan, so weird to pick Washington D.C. as the inaugural wrestling show to start with. There's other territories, there's other cities that I feel that you could definitely choose that would have brought out. So, that's kind of a gutsy move to choose DC as this is the show we're going to start with, and it proved to kick off for them. They sold out definitely. So, is every show going to sell out? No, that's just not going to happen. And let's be real about it. But the fact if they can get a majority of those tickets sold, they're still going to be making money. So, there shouldn't be anything to worry about there.
Well, I know I heard some interviews with the Bucks, and they're saying that, if it's a big city, it'll be a bigger arena. If it's a small city, it's a small arena. Like, if you go in, you want to fill it to capacity. You don't want to go to a place and have half the place open. So, yeah, if you can only do 5,000, 4,000 seat arena, that's what you do, but you fill it. And I think that's a pretty good approach.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And to me, especially when you look at the audience and, it's going to be a game of learning. Obviously, they're going to have to know what looks good, what doesn't. Follow the footsteps of WWE. Look what they still do even. And just pick what looks good. Does a 10,000 seat arena when you only have 7,000 seats filled look good versus having 3,000 or a 5,000 seat arena filled to the brim? You're going to pick that 5,000 seat arena because it just looks better for TV too. And, you're still going to get the same amount of people that are going to be buying up the shirts and whatnot.
They're just sitting there like, oh, yeah, nothing out there. It's like, well, thanks. Did you have to keep barking?
Yes.
So for the first ever AEW on TNT episode, it's going to be 2 hours. I think that's what they're going to be kind of going with, like an 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time frame. So far, the only things announced is Jon Moxley's going to appear live. The first match is going to be Cody Rhodes versus the Panda Heart, Sammy Guevara. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega are going to take on Chris Jericho with 2 mystery partners. So just do you have any idea or any predictions you think that these 2 mystery partners will be?
Oh man, I mean it's going to be interesting. I've heard there's a possibility of it being LAX, because I think they're up on their contract with Impact and that they didn't re-sign with them. So if that's who, that's a good team to have if that's it. I've also seen some people put it was Ralphus and I think Don Callis.
Yeah, I saw a picture of that.
I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, if I had to guess, it would probably be them. I think that'd be great. Other than that, I'm trying to think what other really high profile tag team would be awesome that isn't signed somewhere else right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
What about you?
I don't know. I just hope it's a big surprise. Like, I hope it's because you'd want to be somebody that you see, you're like, holy shit! Like, I didn't expect them. But it's hard. It's hard to tell. Like, I just don't know. Like, like the Briscoes, maybe like that might be kind of in this realm, kind of a surprise because they've kind of got a little bit of heat with the Bucks on there. So
yeah,
I don't know. It'd be like I said, for their first show to have that, and I hope we don't find out until the show starts. Like,
yeah, right.
You remember back in the day, this happened a lot more where, like we had the countdown when Y2J started in WWE. Like, you're like, who the fuck is this guy? And then it happens, and I was young enough and naive enough not to know it was him until he showed up.
Yeah, right.
And you see it, and you're like, what's he doing here? He's from WCW. So seeing something like that would be awesome.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were able to do that with Moxley, so.
It's true. Yeah, exactly. And the other thing coming from the first ever televised event, we are going to crown the AEW Women's World Champion there. So they got it says, be there for history. We're going to see that champion crowned. I'm not sure if they're doing a tournament to figure out who the 2 will be fighting in this, or they're just going to pick the 2 with the best record. But it's exciting. We're going to see a title crowned at this event. Yeah,
right. Exactly.
All right. Well, let's jump in a little kayfabe. So what we have, I thought this was a very, very interesting article, and it kind of played out in the road to, but Vince McMahon recently addressed AEW on the WWE earnings report. So let me read the quote that kind of came from this. So he's kind of talking about what they're going to do with WWE. So, we're going to be bigger, edgier, but still remain in the PG environment. God damn it.
It's good shit.
He says, we won't come anywhere close to going into another level. That will be something we do in terms of the direction of content, more controversy, and better storylines. At the same time, we're not going to go back to the Attitude Era. We're not going to do blood and guts, such as being done on perhaps a new potential competitor. We're not going to go back to that gory crap that we graduated from. It's a more sophisticated product. As far as competition is concerned, the old adage is competition is good for everyone. So then he kind of continued with the blood and guts, and he says, we're hoping that to the extent that they are competition, they don't continue with the blood and guts and gory things that they have been doing, which would be bad. I can't speak for TNT, but I can't imagine they would put up with that. So, we saw that in the road to recently with Cody. It's definitely, when Vince is addressing this, there's some concerns there probably coming from the WWE camp.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the funny thing, that we're already starting to see this edgier WWE, but staying in the lines of PG era, which I think is kind of for all the wrong reasons, to be completely honest. I know, like, it might have been Lacey Evans or something. Like, the cameraman took a big zoom up on her butt and, you know, kind of zoomed out. And I was just like, all right, come on now.
That's not the attitude era that people want.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm sure that there's a handful of fans that are like, yeah, puppies, you know, but I think a lot of fans don't want that stuff. I mean, sure, you know, they find the women beautiful and attractive, and a lot of guys wish that they'd be their girlfriends. Yeah, but like, I do think it's more of the blood and guts attitude era that people want. They want the Stone Colds where it's like you hate your boss and you think he's a jerk and you want to beat him up, and, you know, flipping the bird I mean, flipping the bird, what a great way of being able to say fuck you on cable television
without saying it.
Without saying it and still getting advertisers, right? You know, so it's like I think the bird or the up yours does a lot, you know, more than not being able to do that stuff. Or the guy saying something like, yeah, I'm going to kick his ass, you know. I think that's pretty sweet. Whereas, yeah, I don't know how you can stay edgier in a PG boat. That's really weird. Besides, like, unless you're making like Nickelodeon 90s cartoon references where the parents get it, but the kids don't. So,
yeah. I'm going to kick your hiney. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if you got 1 foot in and 1 foot out, you're just going to mix your audience too much, and it's going to be awkward, and it's not going to come off well. It's going to, I don't know. When you got, like, you know, virgin daiquiri type stuff here, but it's like, hey, if you come over here and get the real daiquiris, it's like, well, I'm going to go get the real daiquiri. Like, I want a little bit of a buzz. Yeah.
I mean, if they can pull off edgier like NXT, then yeah, I get it. Okay. But I wouldn't say NXT is PG even. I would say it skirts the line of PG-13. And, I mean, yeah, but we already see that, no one wants to follow Triple H right now on the main, you know, stage. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
And our last story comes from, Jim Ross. So he was talking about why Wednesdays will be good for a night for AEW. So, if he thinks Wednesday is the best day of the week for AEW to air, he says, hands down, hands down. Again, going back to my thought earlier about how can you find us? Are we where we're supposed to be? Do you have to look for our show? All of those things, I like the consistency a lot, as opposing to airing on a day they might have to be preempted or moved to another network. So Wednesday would be my choice. And they asked on what Wednesday show will mean for him. That means that my life will change. I'll be leaving my home here in Norman every Tuesday morning, and get to the site for our event on Tuesday, have a production meeting Tuesday night, and then do the show live on Wednesday and come home. But that's not going to be every week. There's no off season, as we all know. We've talked about that ad nauseum, so I like the Wednesday. So how do you feel about it being on Wednesday compared to other nights?
Yeah, I like Wednesday. I think that's kind of always been like, hey, why isn't the wrestling on a Wednesday instead? I know you have NXT, and then I think NXT UK, and now 205 Live are on Wednesday. So you're going to have, unfortunately, like the fans that aren't going to like that too much. But then again, NXT's taped, and this is what kind of really killed WWF in the beginning with the rating wars with WCW. When WCW went live and WWE was still taped, a lot of people were like, well, screw that. I want to see the live thing. And I think in this same vein, it's not going to be more so I want to see NXT on Wednesday or I want to see AEW because it's live. It's going to be, well, NXT is already there. I can just watch it the next day on the network.
Yeah, exactly.
It's already based on the network. And I know that there's been talks about taking it once Fox, this deal rolls with Fox, that they're going to take NXT and put it on like Fox Sports 1 or whatever.
I've heard that, yeah. Which, I mean, there's a lot of cable networks you can get that with, but that's not a common channel. It's not a TNT, TBS kind of thing.
Exactly. And if that's the case, you're really going to lose me on that. If they end up doing that and they have the weird licensing where NXT then can't be on the network until a month later, you can say goodbye. I really think, like, if that becomes the case, I I will be leaving the network. Like, I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to take my $10 and put it somewhere else.
Well, I've actually heard that you can get NXT on Hulu without the network.
Yeah, I know you used to be able to. I don't know. You might still be able to. I mean, like the one good reason to have the network still is because you're not paying for the pay-per-view. You're paying,
That's true,
$10 a month versus 50 to 60. So, that's the downside, but that's also like really nice, not having to pay for that. But I mean, on the other hand, though, I'll openly admit, being someone who watches, as much as I can within reason, I haven't really watched a WWE pay-per-view since WrestleMania, but I've been watching the NXT stuff, which I mean, as weird as that sounds, even though it's the same product, it's not. So I'll still watch that, but I haven't really been watching the main stuff at all. And if they take that away from me, I don't know. I'm kind of done.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. Like the Wednesday night works, I think, really well for my schedule. But in terms of like the selfishness of the podcast itself, that's going to be kind of tough. But, we've talked a little bit. We're hoping that we can get out our review of the episode of the show, hopefully on Thursday. So we'll see kind of how it works out. But yeah, it's when you think of the war and everything like that, like Wednesday night by themselves midweek, that's got to be a good spot for it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I know. For a wrestling news source or whatever, that is kind of hard, obviously, because it's like, okay, well, unless we start becoming those guys that do live streams on YouTube and all these people only come to the channel because they think we're showing the actual AEW TNT show.
Oh, yeah.
Except it's just a really terrible reaction of guys that you don't care about. And so, you're like, come on, dude, show me the illegal stream. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how that goes.
But yeah, so great episode so far. Remember, we have a from the stand section, so if you want to throw any kind of feedback for us, it could be on any of the wrestlers we've already spotlighted or any kind of questions, comments. And also, we want to see some of those lovely, lovely promos that you guys can send to us. Just record your voice, send it to us at PodRockers@BElitePod.com. So, Party Johnnetty, what do we have coming up next?
Our next episode, we will be bringing you another AEW House Show Wrestler Spotlight, this time on Hangman Adam Page.
Yeah. So lots of, this is another newer guy I'm getting exposed to. I'm seeing him in a little bit of the Being the Elite, so I'm really excited to see this.
Oh, yeah, and this should be another good episode. I think this is one of those guys that not a lot of people know too much about outside of AEW. So I'll be really happy to get into him, his character, and how he's evolved and what he's been up to during all this time.
All right, well, PodRocker Nation, make sure to reach out to BEP by following us on Twitter at BElitePod and Instagram at BElitePodcast. You can email questions, comments, or those lovely promos to PodRockers@BeElitePod.com. And like us on Facebook by searching for BElitePod.
Well, Shawn Michael, we are desperately out of time for this week's Be Elite Pod. But until next time, I'm Party Johnnetty.
And I'm Shawn Michael saying so long from our BEP Home Elite Studios.
And remember, get off the streets and be elite.